To talk to us about the allegations in Sweden on the advice of his attorney. He has not been charged and proclaims his innocence.
Well, I suppose if you have to be under house arrest, there could be worse places.
Well, it's a gilded cage. It's still a cage. But when you're forced to stay somewhere against your will, it does become something that you want to leave.
It's a radical departure from the lifestyle that the peripatetic internet muckraker is used to, bounding from city to city, country to country, and regularly changing his cell phones, hairstyles, and general appearance, he says, to elude surveillance and avoid being killed, kidnapped, or arrested. And there are reasons for his paranoia. In the last 4 years, Wikileaks has published information that played some role in deciding the 2007 elections in Kenya and fueling the anger that recently brought down the government of Tunisia. It's divulged membership rolls of a neo-Nazi organization in Britain and secret documents from the Church of Scientology. And that was before Assange began publishing U.S. secrets, provoking what he calls threatening statements from people close to power.
What statements are you referring to?
The statements by the Vice President Biden saying, for instance, that I was a high-tech terrorist. Sarah Palin calling to our organization to be dealt with like the Taliban and be hunted down. There's calls either for my assassination or the assassination of my staff, or for us to be kidnapped and renditioned back to the United States to be executed.
Well, as you know, we have a First Amendment and people can say whatever they want, including politicians. I don't think that many people in the United States took seriously the idea that you were a terrorist.
I would like to believe that. On the other hand, that incitements to murder are a serious issue, and unfortunately there is a portion of the population that will believe in them and may carry them out.
If nothing else, WikiLeaks is the latest demonstration that a small group of people with a powerful idea can harness technology and affect large institutions. In WikiLeaks' case, it was the idea to aggregate state and corporate secrets by setting up an online electronic Dropbox where whistleblowers around the world could anonymously upload sensitive and suppressed information. The secrets are stored on servers around the world beyond the reach of governments or law enforcement, then released worldwide on the internet.
The US does not have the technology to take the site down.
Because?
Just the way our technology is constructed, the way the internet is constructed. It's quite hard to stop things reappearing. So we've had attacks on particular domain names, little pieces of infrastructure knocked out. But we now have some 2,000 fully independent in every way websites where we're publishing around the world.
WikiLeaks first caught the attention of most Americans last April when it released this video. It shows a U.S. Apache helicopter crew in Iraq opening fire on a group of suspected insurgents who were standing on a street corner in Baghdad. Some of the men were armed, but 2 of them were journalists from Reuters.
Come on, fire! Shoot.
At least a dozen people were killed in the attack, some of them innocent civilians. Then last July, WikiLeaks released 76,000 classified field reports of U.S. operations in Afghanistan that provided a chaotic and bleak ground-level view of the war. In October, there were another 400,000 classified documents released from Iraq, showing that civilian casualties there were much higher than the Pentagon had claimed. And finally, in November, thousands of State Department cables that lifted the veil on highly sensitive backroom diplomacy. The documents revealed that Arab leaders were lobbying the U.S. to attack Iran, and that the State Department had been secretly collecting intelligence on leaders at the United Nations. It triggered outcries that Assange was a political actor trying to damage the U.S. government.
Are you a subversive?
I'm sure there are certain views amongst Hillary Clinton and her lot that we are subverting their authority. But you're right. We are subverting illegitimate authority. The question is whether the authority is legitimate or whether it is illegitimate.
Do you consider the U.S. State Department a legitimate authority?
It's legitimate insofar as its actions are legitimate. it has actions that are not legitimate.
And you've gone after the ones that you think are illegitimate.
We don't go after. That's a bit of a misconception. We don't go after a particular country. We don't go after a particular organisation or group. We just stick to our promise of publishing material that is likely to have a significant impact.
To increase the impact of the U.S. documents, Assange decided to share them with some of the leading news organizations in the world, including the New York Times, a relationship that grew testy when Assange published the first set of war logs without removing the names of Afghans who were cooperating with U.S. forces.
The most persistent criticism from within the press has been that you have behaved recklessly from time to time. And the example that they cite is that you've decided to release Afghan documents without redacting the names of people who had provided intelligence to the U.S. government.
There's no evidence or any credible allegation, or even any allegation from an official body, that we have caused any individual at any time to come to harm in the past 4 years.
Have been committed here.
Holder announced that the Justice Department and the Pentagon were conducting a criminal investigation. They are reportedly looking at the Espionage Act of 1917 and other statutes to find a way to prosecute Assange and extradite him to the U.S.
It's completely outrageous.
Are you surprised?
I am surprised, actually.
But you were screwing with the forces of nature. You had made some of the most powerful people in the world your enemies. You had to expect that they might retaliate.
Oh, no, I fully expected they retaliate.
You gathered, you stored all sorts of classified cables and documents and then released them to the world on the internet. They see that as a threat. And they want to...
Well, they see it as highly embarrassing. I think what it's really about is keeping the illusion of control. I'm not surprised about that. I'm surprised at how the sort of flagrant disregard for US traditions. That is what I'm surprised about.
You're shocked. Someone in the Australian government said that, look, if you play outside the rules, you can't expect to be protected by the rules, and you played outside the rules.
Oh,
you've played outside the United States' rules.
No, we've actually played inside the rules. We didn't go out to get the material. We operated just like any US publisher operates. We didn't play outside the rules, we played inside the rules.
There's a special set of rules in the United States for disclosing classified information. There is.
There's a
long-standing.
There's a special set of rules for soldiers, for members of the State Department who are disclosing classified information. There's not a special set of rules for publishers who disclose classified information. There is the First Amendment. It covers the case.
Because the judge concluded that he hadn't stolen any information or done any damage.
Is that still one of your primary skills?
Not really. Unfortunately, I've been sort of, promoted up into management, so I don't get to do that so much. But I know the terrain, which means I know what is possible. For example, Bill Gates could program, but he certainly doesn't program anymore. But he knows what is possible for other people to do.
Except that Assange is not Bill Gates and Wikileaks is not Microsoft. The shoestring operation that created all the havoc has no permanent offices and is headquartered wherever Assange happens to be. Wikileaks is a small non-profit organization with a handful of employees, a secret cadre of international programmers, and a legion of worldwide volunteers. Its finances are administered by the Valhallen Foundation, based in Berlin and named after a famous hacker. According to its ledgers, WikiLeaks took in $1.3 million last year in donations with expenses of about $500,000.
For somebody who abhors secrets, you run a pretty secret organization.
That's not true. What we want is transparent government, not transparent people. We are an organization who, one of our primary goals is to keep certain things secret, to keep the identities of sources secret. Secrecy is an inherent part of our operation.
The State Department would make the same argument. They have doing very sensitive work, that they're trying to make peace and negotiate situations around the world very delicately. It's important that they do this in secrecy. What's the difference?
And we don't say that the State Department should have no secrets. That's not what we say. Rather, we say that if there are people in the State Department who say that there is some abuse going on, and there's not a proper mechanism for internal accountability and external accountability, they must have a conduit to get that out to the public. And we are the conduit.
Given all the attention that Assange has received, we were curious about how he thought he was being perceived in the United States. He told us he hasn't had the time to give it much thought.
Do you want me to give you my characterization of what I think people think?
Sure.
Mysterious, little weird, occult-like figure, little paranoid.
Well, you're repeating all the ad hominem attacks by our critics. My role when I do something like speak about that we have discovered the deaths of 109,000 individual people in Iraq, 15,000 civilian casualties never before reported anywhere. That's a very serious role. That is not a role where I can engage in humour. So I'm not used to performing under the spotlight, and I'm learning this as time is going by.
You have shown a fair amount of contempt for the mainstream press over the years. Why did you decide to, as you used the word, partner with them in some of these most recent releases?
We're a small organisation. We're in a position, say with Cablegate, where we have 3,000 volumes of material that are very important to get out to the public in a responsible manner, that have the potential for great change. For example, this recent revolution in Tunisia. It is logistically impossible. So instead, our organisation delegates its excess source material to other journalists who will have more impact and who will do a better job.
There is an element of the press, most of the mainstream press, nobody wants to see you prosecuted because it could affect the way that they do their business. But there's also a feeling within the community that you're not one of them, that you play a different game.
We do play a different game, and I hope we're a new way.
The point that they're making, I think, is that you're not you're a publisher, but you're also an activist.
We're a particular type of activist. In the US context, there seems to be communist activists or something. So
right, agitator.
Somebody
that's more interested in...
It's a dirty word in the US.
It's a dirty word. And people think that what you're trying to do is to sabotage the workings of government.
No, we are not that type of activists. We are free press activists. It's not about saving the whales. It's about giving people the information they need to support whaling or not support whaling. Why? That is the raw ingredients that is needed to make a just and civil society. And without that, you're just sailing in the dark.
There have been clear signs that Assange, under the threat of possible indictment by the Justice Department, has moderated some of his views. Before releasing the last